All righty, welcome. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you've been enjoying yourselves with the 48-hour telethon for Vengeance Turns. The segment here is very near and dear to my heart, and I brought in a couple of friends. Starting off, I'll let them introduce themselves. Starting over here to my right, and my screen is upper left. This is my godson, Tomas Cone, and I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Tomas Cone. Like the gentleman just said, everything about Jamald, man. He's an amazing person, great heart. I met him through acting class, and ever since he's been like a guiding father figure to me throughout every step of my life here. And so I'm really honored to be here today. And for me, I'm a HBCU graduate from the heart of Alabama, Talladega, the first HBCU in the state of Alabama, might I add. But for me, I come from the Deep South, and I've been around a lot of different things. And it's nice that we have this forum to be able to talk about whatever we need to talk about, because voices need to be heard. Stories are out there that need to be told.
All right. Appreciate that, sir. First HBCU in Alabama.
First HBCU.
So awesome. Alabama. And now to his left, my upper right screen, my sis, Miss Nia Miranda Duckett. I'll let her introduce herself.
What's going on, everybody? I am Nia Miranda Duckett, and I'm a Black woman. No, but seriously, I am happy to be able to be on this platform and just, have conversations that we all need to be having right now that we probably should have been having a long time ago. But I'm happy that right now it's more accessible for us to come together and speak about change, speak about togetherness, speak about pushing things forward in a time like this. I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally, with Igbo Nigerian roots, and Igbo. And I'm just happy to be in a group with like-minded people who really believe in putting the work in to create change.
Thank you, sis. And moving on, next to her would be my beautiful, lovely queen, the better half of me, Miss Courtney Nicole.
Hello. So just an introduction, Jamald.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from Chicago, Illinois. So I know Chicago has come up a lot in the conversation of Black Lives Matter and what some call Black on Black crime, which I think we will talk about because I don't think there's a such thing. We don't talk about white on white crime, Hispanic on Hispanic crime. When criminals do criminal things, they get arrested. And so we'll talk about that. But I'm a former teacher and actress, and I've always been an advocate. So I believe in fighting for what's right. So let's talk about it.
Thank you, Madame. And next to her, another Chi-Town, Miss Candice Lamoire.
Yeah.
I got it right?
Is that perfect?
All right, introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Candice Lamoire. As Jamald said, I'm from Chicago, Illinois. Another HBCU graduate, Florida A&M University. One of the things that I'm big on is educating people, and not just other races, but even our own people, of our history and the things important, so we can remember where we come from and what we're made of. And I'm fortunate from going to a HBCU to learn a lot of that stuff that is not in our history books, that people learn later on in life. So I'm here for the conversation, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, because I feel like, as everyone said, it needs to be had. And it's just a lot of information that is not out there or misused or not used correctly. So I'm thankful to have this opportunity to talk about it.
Awesome. And so we're just going to get right into it. Let's just start. So to open up, I just want to ask, And this is, and I say this because I'm from the South. So, a lot of things that are happening now, they're experiences that I've already gone through. Mm-hmm. That I've already gone through. So, it's I lived in Georgia as well, and seen these things, like been down like a back road and where you get stopped, and it's like, do I really want to stop, or in the state of what's going on right now. So how has racism affected you guys? How have you been affected by racism?
Well, as another Black man in this conversation, it's been peril with trials and tribulations. I mean, I've come from a family that drives across the country. So you can imagine the amount of times that we've been stopped. So when I started doing it on my own, that was one of the major fears for me, was what would I do when I get stopped? Now, I had my own car when I was in school in Talladega. It was a gift from a cousin who liked the street race. So it had tinted windows, nice rims, great sound system. And because I'm driving this car, I'm now a suspect to every cop in a 20-mile radius on Freeway 20 or Interstate 20. And we all know once you get down them roads, it's lined with trees, super dark, nowhere for you to pull over safely. I've had an incident where I got hit by a hit-and-run truck driver, and I called in, and they could tell, I guess, by my voice that I was African-American, and they decided they weren't going to come and send any help. I've also had instances when they pulled me over, and they asked idiotic questions, not knowing that I'm a student at the college right down the street. And it's just like, what's the real nature of this traffic stop? Are you here to tell me about a tail light? Was my music too loud? Were my windows not too tinted? Like, you just saw something that looked like it belonged to an African American, and you decided to pick with them. So stuff like that really irked me.
If I can jump in on that, I can recall a few times where I've either had to deal with racism or just white ignorance. I went to Michigan State University, which was a predominantly white, institution. And the program that I was in, which was Lyman Briggs, it was like a medical program. Out of the entire dormitory, it was maybe 10 Black people, and everyone else was white. And I would have conversations with the people who were on my floor. Someone asked me before about my hair, right? Black women's hair is a topic of discussion. Like, how can you change it so much? Why do you tie it up? Why do you wrap it up and everything? And then one guy asked if weave came from all the bald-headed children in Africa. So those type of questions I've had to deal with. I've had to deal with being diplomatic when I chose to answer those questions and not just go off of the innate emotion that it may have given me. I can recall a time where I got into a car accident and I got hit by a snowplow. My car pushed into a fire hydrant. The fire hydrant exploded and water started to fill my car. I was, in a position of distress, and the police came. I crawled out of my car to the other side of the road, and I realized that I left my phone in my car and it was about to get wet and I needed to call my family. I asked the officers, could you please get my phone for me? They told me no. It was all white officers. The fire department came. It was an all white fire department. I asked for help. They told me you'll get help soon. And they did not help me. It took someone to come outside of their house to see me on the ground crying to bring their home phone out so I could call my family. So I've had certain experiences that allowed me to know that racism is not a figment of my imagination. It's reality. So, yeah.
Definitely. And now Candice and Courtney, growing up in Chicago, and I know you touched on the Black on Black crime, and it's this thing that they always talk about, quote unquote, like that's a thing. But what do you, for me personally, I feel like, situation breeds whatever the situation is, out of, if it's, if you're desperate for something, you're going to attack what's around you. So, but nobody, like I said, nobody ever talks about like white on white crimes. So it's never ever a label per se, you know. So speak to me on, you know, coming from the Midwest, like how have you guys been affected? And I know Courtney, you lived in the South as well, so you may have, you know, something. So talk to us a little bit about that.
You want to do it? So growing up in Chicago, I think in the North, there's a subtle racism is what I learned to label it as, right? Like, I stayed off of 115th Street. So, you know, our roads don't get fixed as often. I know that, like our exit, they were doing some work and it was closed down for a very long time. So, you know, we were inconvenienced and had to go, you know, past our exit or get off beforehand to get home for a long amount of time. And I think that I was like maybe a teenager at that point and learning how to drive. And so that's when I kind of realized that, oh, okay, so had this been going on in another neighborhood where their property taxes were a lot higher, then, you know, these roads would be fixed, right? So, you know, I think that throws in another interesting topic, which you would love for us to talk about today, which is the census, right? And so the census is supposed to, you know, we're supposed to count our numbers so they can allot money to these areas for roads, for, you know, representatives for government, for schools, and for things like that. But unfortunately, the schools in my neighborhood were disadvantaged. And my mom actually took my test scores to another side of town in Chicago and was like, look, hey, my daughter has these grades, she has these, you know, test scores, and I need y'all to take her over here, because my neighborhood high school, I remember walking out of 8th grade one day, and it was the wintertime, and I remember seeing someone being beat with a 4x4, gang members, and watching blood run down the ice. I had another incident like that in high school. So, you know, kind of like what you said, Jamald, it's like when you have these disadvantages in your neighborhood, you know, it's kind of like you have nothing else to do. Idle minds are the devil's playground, I believe is how the phrase goes. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about now when we're talking about defunding the police, right? Now, people get alarmed when we say defunding the police. It's a trigger word or phrase to some people. But I've always said this in this conversation is that had they come to the table and said, hey, let's reimagine public safety, they would have been like, yeah, okay. And so, and next topic, right? So defund the police was exactly the phrase they needed to use to get the exact attention that they're getting to have the conversation of actually reimagining or redistributing those funds. Or say, for instance, this young man, Daniel Prude, who we just saw the videotape of that was killed at the hands of those who have sworn to serve and protect us, right? You could tell this man was having a breakdown. Wait. What's the rush? Are you rushing the police? Are you rushing to get home? I mean, rushing to get back to the precinct to do this paperwork? Or do you just want to wait this man out until the ambulance get there? He gonna pass out. Yes, he may have found PCP in his system, but I think you can tell that he was naked out in the street. So you can tell something was wrong. Maybe there was a mental health thing. And so that's, to me, what we're talking about. Do we send ACT teams with the police? Should the ambulance be called out also? And not to actually do the work, but to kind of be a guide, or to have some checks and balances here, you know, because they're going out alone and they're sticking up for, you know, their team and their gang and their blue lives, right? Which is a choice, but who's doing the checks and balances? So I think that's an important conversation to have. And, you know, like there was a little girl, I think, who was killed in Chicago. So it's like, to me, black on black crime. They found that person, they're arrested, right? But how many people have been killed by the hands of police that do not receive justice? And I think that's a big conversation.
In regards to the black on black crime, especially like growing up in Chicago, I think Courtney hit on it. Like when we look at the school systems and what they offer to children, especially like kids in the inner city, just overall in a lot of other states, it's not a lot. So what are these kids getting into? What are they turning to? Where are they safe havens? You know, a lot of times when you're growing up in an environment where both parents are working, unfortunately, you know, the eyes aren't always there. So it's just one of those things where those kids have to have some form of outlets. But if the schools do not have a system where they can provide opportunity and free opportunity, then what are they left to do? For me, I went to majority of my schools I went to was majority Black. There was one point in my time when I went to a school that was in a north suburb, and the resources that school had compared to my school in the city, and then also my school in the south suburb was ridiculous. It was like, of course you can be involved and take violin in 30 different languages. Meanwhile, the inner city school, it's only one language offered. There's barely gyms. So it's things like that, like the discrepancy between the resources that are given to certain schools versus others is a setup. And that's when we start talking about systematic stuff. That's where we begin. It's the systems that are being put into place to keep Black and brown people under, unfortunately, you know. And then just as far as with racism, as everyone stated, like sometimes you get it overtly, sometimes you get it very subtle, in the sense of, you know, where they want to put you in your place, where you can and can't do, you know, as a Black person. Like, for instance, even though majority of my schools were Black, my teachers were white. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, what kind of, I don't want to say training like we're different people, but what more do they have to learn, or do they have to empower themselves with to be able to teach us wholly, and not just what, you know, their system or what their information is. And you see the discrepancy, like, yeah, the kids that are smart, that stand out, they'll gravitate towards them, but that kid that may not be with it, or they like to label as problem children, that becomes a system issue. Attention issues, they want to put them on medication. So it's all these things that start very young in regards to, if we're looking at crime and Black on Black crime, or in inner city type of stuff. It's like the places that's supposed to embrace and teach and educate are the places that push them out and say, you figure it out yourself. And then just with racism, I went to school in the South and from the Midwest. To me, you know, I didn't have to go down back roads and stuff in the city, but you have the racism, and it's counting your face. I remember once in high school, there's other things that happened, but in high school, we were playing against a white school, and it was football, and I didn't really know why the guys wore the little dark, you know, the black mark on their eyes. So I didn't. So I asked one of the guys from the opposing team, it was a white guy. I was like, what is this? Why do you guys wear this on your eye? He said, so we can look like y'all.
No.
Not okay. Can I want to connect something, Jamald. Like, when we talk about systemic racism, right? And so let's talk about this education, right? So you were talking about the schools, right? So let's talk about schools get funded by property tax, right? And so if you're talking about a lot of Black and brown communities where they don't own their home, right? Or the homes are not valued at the same price, then the property taxes are different. So what's going into the schools? Then there's something called the Title I fund, which is supposed to, and I've always taught at Title I schools, so they're supposed to kind of, you know, bridge that gap with funding, right? But that it's not always enough. I'll say that. I taught for 13 years. And out of those schools, I can say that with my own expertise. So talking about the systemic part and talking about how parents in those homes have to work 2 13-hour job, 13, their pay is $13 an hour. You know what I'm saying? So they're working 2 and 3 of these jobs. So they're not home to go to a PTA meeting, to actually go to the community meeting that may be happening in the community, to actually talk about the needs, to fight for their children. I remember having to, say we're having spaghetti night at school. I remember having to ask kids, whose parent needs a ride tonight, right? And the teachers or administrators would actually go pick these parents up and whatever other children they had so that they could come to PCA that night, just so we could make sure we had the right involvement and the right conversation. So when we talk about systemic, I'm sure maybe many of this audience has heard this already, but we're talking about going back to when they gave immigrants home loans, and we are not considered immigrants. We were enslaved people. So our ancestors did not get those home loans. Or when they redlined us and said, let's put their schools and let's put their homes in this community and keep it down, right? And then when we have developed Black wealth in places like Tulsa, which we all, know about now, right? And we're in Durham, and during North Carolina, they burned and killed these people. They burned their land and they killed their people. So, you're telling us to build ourselves up by our boot, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps when y'all sent us out here with no feet, with no shoes, So we're talking about the systemic part, and I think that kind of gets to it and talking about why we don't have the resources that we need to have in our community.
It's funny that you mentioned that. So, in doing some research, I was looking up, we talk about reparations, right? And that's, people ask, why we always talk about it. Because think about it like this. So I looked something up, and reparations is not to be confused with compensated emancipation. Now, what compensated emancipation was, the slave owner received compensation for freeing his slaves, right? And it says the slave owner received compensation for manumitting them. Now, manumitting is the act of an owner freeing their slaves. So everybody got paid off of us being in slavery and getting out of slavery, but nobody paid us. You know what I mean? So it's funny that you bring that up, and then you start talking about the process of systemic racism. Yeah, like you were saying, even in our communities, how our property is undervalued, and then people, even some of us joke about when you move to the suburbs and then you've been out there for a while and things like that, and then another African American or brown family move in, and it's like there goes the neighborhood, my property devalues. That doesn't make sense, but that's how it's been designed and set up. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Can I say something to that?
Oh,
sure.
A couple of things I wanted to say pertaining systematic racism and education specifically. I think that the resources is something that we need, but more than just the need of resources, we need to actually look at the structure of the curriculum. Because to fund people to teach us incorrect information is not helping the problem. And if you look at a lot of the history books, especially now, where slavery is looked at as we were immigrants who came over for an opportunity, is what some of the things that I've seen in history books, that's not the truth. We didn't ask to come here, right? And so I think that it's deeper than just funding. It's actually looking at the structure of what's being funded, what's being taught. Candice mentioned that she was in a predominantly Black school that was being taught by predominantly white people. How are you really teaching me about my history? Do you know my history? Do you know my history before slavery? Because I was in existence before I was enslaved. And I think that we need to understand that as a people, that our history does not start picking cotton. That's not where our history starts. Our history starts draped in gold, vibrant colors, ruling the nation. That's where our history starts. And I think that if we could allow that to get into our curriculum, then some of our young boys and our young women can grow up to be their true selves. You know, that's systematic racism. If I'm teaching you something opposite than what's the truth, then you are going to follow this guideline that I've given you. So this guideline is sending you to work for someone else instead of having your own. This guideline is sending you to possibly prison instead of thinking of other ways you can, you know, create togetherness in your community and having that unity that I always talk about. So I think that right there, the education system is a part of systematic racism because it teaches us systematic racism. It teaches us to work for someone else. It doesn't teach us to have our own, you know, and I think that's something that we really need to discuss. And that's also some responsibility on us too.
I wanted to happen.
That's our responsibility too. And I think that just as much as I'm gonna give Candice time. Give me 1 second, brother. I think just as much as we need to watch what we're allowing our children to learn in those schools, we aren't supposed to just hand our kids to the schools and say, whatever they teach you, that's all you're supposed to know, and then go ahead about our business because we got to work these multiple jobs. Our job is tough, especially being parents. You know what I'm saying? After they go to school, then it's a whole new training that they have to learn inside of the house, which means we, as the adults, also have to be educated. We can't assume that they'll teach our children what they're supposed to know.
I agree with that. The responsibility do fall on us. I think, you know, probably like in our generation or with our parents raising us and so forth, a lot of it was assimilating. And you know, to move forward, you had to learn these things, or how to, as they want to say, to operate or behave in the world. You needed to learn those things. But I think where, as people, and I say everybody, because some people did do it, what we failed is that we didn't continue to teach our truths. And some of that, unfortunately, is because some of us don't know our truths. So, you know, the education aspect is not even just with the kids, it's with the adults. Because like when I wanted to go to a HBCU, my stepfather wanted me to go to Notre Dame, because he was from South Bend, Indiana. I didn't want to go to Notre Dame, but he didn't at that particular time, quote unquote, see the value in going to an HBCU. It was like, well, what do you need to learn about Black folks for? You're Black. And it's like, you know, that's an ignorant statement in a whole lot of ways. And it wasn't until he went down there, he saw what the school's about, the programming and all that other kind of stuff, that his eyes was open and he was woken to see all of these beautifully intelligent Black people and what we had to offer and stuff like that, that he was like, oh, okay, your thought process about where you wanted to go was great. But even beyond that, to your point, Nia, your people teaching you about you, your history coming before slavery. Because like you said, in our history books, everything starts with slavery. Like that's where the earth was created and here were the slaves. And it's like, you know, it's like, that's not truth. And then even with the history we created in America, that information isn't in our history books. You know, when you're younger, you're not learning about Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina. It was in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So why isn't it in our history books? You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of stuff and a lot of things that as African Americans that was great that we did also here in America that isn't out. We hear about the tried and trues. You know, we know about Dr. Martin Luther King. We know about Rosa Parks. We know about a few people, but not the three women that also sat with Rosa Parks. You know, we don't know those stories and stuff like that. And it is, and I feel like it's a mindset to try to keep us to believe only one can be, you know, at a time or something like that. But I just kind of wanted to jump back to Jamald's statement. Gosh, if I can remember what he stated. Gosh, Lee, because it was a point. I'm gonna have to come back to it. Come back.
You got education.
It was originally. However, what Candice just said really just spoke to me. So growing up in Lithonia, Georgia, which is on the outskirts of Atlanta, it felt as if we were in this bubble. And a lot of people joke that, oh, it's Wakanda, it's this. But let me go ahead and tell you what I later learned were the disadvantages of living in that type of segregation. Because honestly, that's what it was. It wasn't put upon us in the laws. It was systemically put upon us that this is where we had to go. And it felt like everybody was thriving. But when you really take a step back and look at it, yes, you might have had nice houses that were empty, nice cars that still needed gas. We still had a lot of different things going on. Like we might have been surrounded by these teachers that were quote unquote supposed to be woke, but they weren't teaching us all the Black history because they were still getting the books from the state. All of our history started with slavery, went to Dr. King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks. It wasn't until I went to Talladega College, which I was against that first because it was in my mind, I've been surrounded by Black people my entire life. Why would I want to go to an HBCU? It wasn't until I stepped on the campus of Talladega College that I was filled with this pride in my Blackness. Growing up in Lithonia, Georgia, it was just like, I'm Black. This is what we have. This is where we're always going to be. And there's so many people who never moved out of that area because they felt so comfortable, but not really. They were really trapped in that area because that's what they were told that's all they could do. And it's so funny when Candice said that you know, that there's people who like rise to the top of the class, as they call us the talent in 10th. I always hated that because those kids were always chastised for or they will say, oh, you talk white, so you're gonna get better in life, or you look fair skin, all that type of shit. All that type of stuff will really irked me because that's just the type of stuff that we think. And where does that come from? And I know that they've tried to debunk the Willie Lynch letter, but that same mentality still holds true today where people really hate on one another just for subtle stuff. And that subtle stuff, and that comes from somewhere else. That's not something that we just innately born with.
So I just want to say as a teacher, right? And as an educator, right? When you live in a state, you learn that state history. Mm-hmm. We live in America. So we're going to be taught American history. So to ask the school system to teach our kids about African culture, like what you were saying, Nia, it's just not going to happen. They're teaching American history because we're in America, right? So if we want our kids to learn African American studies, then that is for, especially I'm talking to elementary, middle school level, right? When you get to high school, you do branch off and take some other histories, but they're not going to teach it. And I think, you know, we talked about why we don't teach it, but I think so. I was having this conversation with someone else the other day. And a lot of times, like say, for instance, if you were, you know, raped, you had some trauma in your life, or you were robbed, held at gunpoint, say you tried to commit suicide, you know, we're now trying to empower people to speak up about those things, which I think is also this. But I believe that part of the reason, like my father is from Haiti, he did not teach us the language, nor did he talk about the culture. And as I got older, I learned to grow that was because he was probably or embarrassed and ashamed of the things that he came from. You know, he talked about eating dirt cookies. You know, I'm like, what is that? Like cookies literally made from dirt, you know, or the fact that when he came here, when my grandparents came here, they left the oldest and the other one. They took the baby and the girl of the family. So my dad and his other brother had to stay in Haiti with other family members, maybe not treated as well as, you know, so it's like there's this shame. And I think that a lot of times what we tried to do was get past our history. We're like, oh, we're past that moment. Like after the 60s happened, it was like, okay, we're past that. Let's go to school. Let's educate ourselves. We're free. We can vote. Let's do this. And we stopped talking about our own history. I would encourage every parent, grandparent, auntie, uncle to continue to talk about our African American studies with our own students, and especially now while we're educating them at home, right? Or we're zooming into school. Add an extra 30 minutes to your child's curriculum, or even if it's 15, do it as their age permits, right? But start adding some of that history. And then when you talk about teachers, Nia, which I'm glad you brought up, so we have to push textbooks. We still get old textbooks. Schools in other districts get a textbook, if not every year, every new year, they get the updated books. A lot of times in our low-income schools, we're still teaching from books that are 3 and 4 years old. I remember teaching out of a history book that didn't even have the current president in it. And it wasn't because it was just the election year. It was a year or two after. So why is that? Let's look at that. And I would like to encourage people to fight. Think about your university. Write a letter to your university and say that their education, whatever teachers they're putting out in the world, the School of Education at any university, those teachers should be required to take a cultural humanities class. or African American histories class, because they could be a white teacher and say, oh, I'm gonna go back to my own neighborhood and teach, right? And you think, okay, I grew up in a white neighborhood as a white teacher, so I'm just gonna teach my own kind. You don't know who's gonna move into that neighborhood. You don't know what family's gonna move in there. And I think that that's a lot of the problem. We talk about white teachers, but we have to empower those white teachers to feel comfortable to talk about Black history. You're asking white teachers to teach Black kids about Black history. They don't feel empowered to do that. They don't know enough. As an educator, we have to take a science class, a music class, an art class. We have to take a special education. That's true, Nia. Like, we can disagree, but I've taught with white teachers, and if they grew up in a white neighborhood, went to a white college, and now are teaching Black kids, they're an adult and they should know better, but it doesn't mean they do, right? And that's the case with a lot of us. So I encourage everybody to write a letter to their colleges and ask that the School of Education, it be mandatory that they take those classes. They should not be putting any teachers out in the world that cannot teach every child.
I agree with that. Can I say? Okay. Okay. So two things. One, and I just wanted to be clear, Courtney. You were saying, I get that, like in grade school and stuff like that, we probably not going to expect them to teach about African history beforehand, but you said American history, we African American,
but it starts here, right? But so you talked about why it starts with slavery, so I'm telling you why.
But
because that's our entrance to America.
But they delete everything else outside of slavery. So that stuff that has happened on American soil, like
Tulsa, like the Act Saturday in Florida, I'm with it.
All of that needs to be in those history books. And then the thing that I wanted to go back to what Jamald had stated about, he made a statement like, when there's transition and just say Black families move into a certain area and there's, it's a good, quote unquote, good area. What the heck ever that means. A good area, and then more than one Black family, and it's like there goes the neighborhood. Automatically, that is saying Black people value is devalued. Correct. Their worth isn't there. And one, as people, we have to stop saying that or thinking that if we think it. Two, the value isn't devalued. Let's be real. We're building these neighborhoods, that these houses, the Blacks and the brown people are building these places that these white people and other people or people of money or whatever is moving into. So we build this area up, but then someone moves into it and now it's devalued. Like that just needs to be erased. And that's a process to make us think that our worth isn't enough. And then just to go to the point that as far as the empowerment statement, like empowering the other races to want to teach Black people, it's like I get it. I don't know if the word for me, if I were used would say empower, because there's a certain, in my opinion, level of responsibility that I feel like people should have. You going into this profession, you going into whatever, the wantingness to know more, even if you're planning on going to teach in your own schools and it was majority white or majority Asian or whatever the case like that. It's like, where do you go to want to learn? Like, I feel like that's the whole thing. As Black people, we will have to learn. We will have to learn to teach Susie and Jackie and whatever the case like that. But they never have to. And that's the problem. It's like we're always assimilating in their world and they never have to consider our world, us. The only time, and this may be, it's not off topic, but the only time I feel like wanting to know about us is when it's another slave movie. Is when I see a movie full of
they show
other
up
races,
homicide, or when they want to steal our culture, or when they want to steal our culture, when they want to do dance.
If it's a regular TV show that's quote unquote for Black people, because you got more than one Black person, I don't see the masses there. But anytime there's a slave movie and they're in the movie theater, it's full. So they want to learn that history.
So I want to go back to so the consensus is, does it start with education in order for us to to move forward? I mean, like we're in a fight right now, but I'm just asking, does it start with education? And Tomas, I'm gonna let you respond.
I said this back when I was in college, almost 5 years ago after the death of Mike Brown. It's gonna start with love, point blank, period. It's not gonna start in the schools. It's not gonna start in the government. It's gonna start at the homes of everyone else who's making these changes, who have to help us, as have been called recently, allies. We need everyone to start with love. It has to come from both sides. Like, you can say it's going to start in education, but whoever is over education, whoever is making those laws, whoever's making those changes, they have to have love and compassion in their heart for everyone, and specifically Black men and women. They need to really hone in and love those people who don't look like them. They need to understand them. So before we can make those changes, we need to have love.
I think before we make those changes, we have to have self-love. I think that we need to love ourselves. We need to, and education doesn't start with the education in the school. The education starts with education in the home. And so I think that if our community was to come together to educate ourselves about ourselves, to understand what our heritage is, our cultures are, and to be able to love ourselves, I think that then our community will be seen as whole and not as a broken community. And then I think we'd be able to have a little more respect. I think that the lack of respect comes from the lack of togetherness in our community. And I know that that can be disagreed upon, but when I think about, we live in LA. If I go to Koreatown, they're all together. You go into their town, you'll purchase things from them. You don't feel disrespected that they're speaking their language. You don't feel unsafe that they're all together in their community. You don't have a problem that they call their town Koreatown, right? But they also take care of their own. When you go into other Little Ethiopia or places like that, they take care of their own, they're together, and it's not a feeling of unsafe. But when it comes to Black Americans, we don't have no little Africa, one. And two, I don't think that our community has created the love that we need within ourselves like we should. And I think it's because we really don't. We don't know. We are moving with a mindset of survival. And if you're always thinking about surviving, you sometimes can't think about unity. So when people say that crabs in a barrel mentality, it's because you put us in a barrel. We're not supposed to be in a barrel. So what is it that you expect us to do? So we have to educate ourselves to understand, okay, yes, we are in this barrel. But if we come together and we put you on top of you and on top of you, then by the time we get up, we can pull our brothers and sisters up. We have to be just as strategic about getting out of this situation as they were putting us in this situation. So I believe it starts with education and love within us first.
So in saying that, because I know you brought up the crabs in a barrel,
JC.
No, and so the self-love, like you said, is that the reason? I mean, how they have us, they put so many labels on us, and like you were saying, like, you go to, if you think about the Hispanics, how they all, they may live in the same house for a while, or you go to the Jewish communities and they're thriving and everybody is putting money back into themselves. But yet with us, it's almost like it's easier to divide us, because even within, the community, I mean, you go back, and like I said, being from the South, you go back to the light skin, dark skin thing, good hair versus bad hair. But why is it, and I'm just asking the questions. Why do you feel like it's so easy to kind of like divide us instead of, and we're seeing it now, we're seeing it a little bit more now where we're starting to try to, come back together. But why do you think it's so easy to divide us?
This is the thing. Okay, so I want us to demystify, if I'm using that word right, like we're talking about all these cultures and how they're together, right? So I just want to be clear. Together, meaning we're working together, but doesn't mean that we're all in agreement with everything. And I think sometimes people get that confused as to, not saying when you said it, but like some people get that confused when they say we're not together. No, sometimes we're together, but we all have difference of opinions. Like we're not one in a sense where, you know, just in this conversation, we have similar but slightly different viewpoints, right? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes when it comes to us, and this is just generally speaking, we're like, oh, we're not together. And normally when we're not, we say we feel like we're not together. It's like if everybody isn't on the same page. And I think that there has to be respect that there's going to be different opinions, because at the end of the day, we're all individuals. We have our own individual experiences, and there's a lot of information that still has to be learned. So I have 2 points with that. And then, so like, let's take this, for instance, Courtney and Nia, your dad's Haitian, Igbo, Nigerian, and everything and stuff. So even in that little bit, you know a little bit more about your history than, I don't want to say the average African American. I don't want to say that, but
yeah, it's very true.
The average African American. My last name is Lamoire. It's French. People ask me all the time, where are your people from? I know my grandfather, Mississippi. That's it. Now, at this age, I can do the research to figure that out and dig a little deeper and stuff like that. But I'm at a certain age, and that's all I know. You know what I mean? That's all I know. And then even like on my dad's side, I only can go back so far. So there's like, just even knowing when we say where we come from or whatever, a lot of times the generation, like people generation stop at their great grandma or their grandma, depending upon what their family structure was. But far as to Jamal's point in regards to being in our communities and being together and things of that nature, I think that's something that's, there's more work we need to do to come together. And I definitely think in this time and moment, we're doing it. But there are people that are together. And I think sometimes it's a mind F that people that's put out there to make it want to seem like we're all over the place and we don't have no togetherness. And that's not the full truth. It's work that needs to be done. We do need to pull more resources together so that we can see it as big as these other communities are. But there are communities, there are things, and there are people together. So let's not let people make us feel like we're just all in it for ourselves and we're not whatever. But I think that's a way that a lot of times they do keep us divided. It's because it's like, well, he ain't doing that, she ain't doing it. It's like they play us against each other. You know what I'm saying? And we can't, and it's like we can't play into that. It's like, okay, yeah, all right, the three of us may be together. Y'all may, this is an example, have one foot in, but it ain't like they're against us. It's like, okay, where you stand? You know what I'm saying? Let's talk, let's have the conversation. Because if we think about it as people, we're love, because you said starting from love, you said from self-love. I feel like it's awareness also, because a lot of time, a lot of people lack awareness. And once you are aware, then you can start trying to apply the self-love and the love. And then if we're talking about for our counterparts, our allies, our white, Latin, everybody else, as far as that, what they can do and where it start with them, it's like, consider a human. We're human. Like, I'm starting to give people, when people want to understand something, comparing it to their dang on dogs. Because it seems like they get that. Because, like, I was in a conversation last night, right? And someone said, with Jacob, right? So imagine if it was your dog that went and was going to go break up a fight or break up something because they saw some kids or something in trouble. And then your dog walked away and police let out all them bullets. We have everybody and everybody else, and people get that. Yesterday on the beach, it was a big fish or a little shark or something. I don't know what happened, but it was on the sand. The amount of people that ran to it to see what was, to care for it. Not to say it was ridiculous, but it's like compared to a black body that's laid out. Correct. So it's like far as awareness to me personally, for whatever's important to these different people, races, ethnicities, if it's their dogs, if it's their cats, if it's their parent, I don't know. What if it was your dog? What if it was your parent? What if it was your son? Let's put it in context so maybe they can have a little empathy to change their mind. But it goes back to awareness.
So it's ironic that you say that about that. So my question now is with with what you just said is like, people, it's almost like they treat us less than, like we're less than dogs. Do you think like social media has its, because like I said, these things have been happening since the beginning of time, that, but it wasn't caught on like on camera. How do you feel social media and camera phones have shined a bigger spotlight on this situation that has already been happening?
I just want to take a moment to say that we're an hour into this conversation, and I need a breath. You know what I'm saying? Like, so anybody who's watching, or any white person or someone who is not Black that is watching, you have to think about what it takes for us to have these conversations. And I read something yesterday about how, my people never enslaved anybody, and you never picked any cotton. But speaking about you and this dog, and like thinking about these animals, it's like you don't have to have done that to have the care or compassion that's needed in this. And we're trying to continuously have these conversations. If George Floyd woke everybody up, think about how many people have been killed since May 25th. And how many times we keep having to have these conversations. And the fact that we're having these conversations to ask people to care. It's exhausting. I just want to say that, and then your question, yes, but I need like a minute, you know what I'm saying?
I'll go.
No.
I was going to say, to answer your question, I think it's wonderful that social media and camera phones and everything is out now, because we're seeing, as Courtney said, there's so many other lives and so many other things that's been done that have not been caught on film. The disturbing part of it is still that we got to have all this evidence to prove. We still dealing with Breonna Taylor. We still dealing with, so much stuff. We got to have all this evidence to prove we're right, or to prove something to say you see. You know what I'm saying? And it's ridiculous to me, because I'm thankful for the camera phones. I'm thankful that we're getting all this information out. It is overwhelming, and every day it's like you're being gut punched in the stomach and heart, because there's another person that's dead, another person that's wrongfully treated. And as Courtney said, it's exhausting, and I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take, I don't even want to put this out there, but being other races on the other end of that, lives being, whatever. Like, I don't know what it takes for people as a whole to say, let's stop this, let's change this. But it's like, it seemed like that's where things, I don't want to say that's where things are going, but I feel like that's where the president is pushing stuff to, or just the stuff that's being allowed. And it has to be something else. Like, I feel like when these things come out on these tapes, then people try to villainize these people, to try to bring up all of their history, to say, well, they deserve that, or, well, it's just another one. And it's like, no one's life, Black, white, brown, indifferent, no one's life deserves to be treated in that manner. So I'm thankful for all this takes, even though every day it's like creating panic in my heart.
I want to say something, because all of us in this window that you all are seeing, we're all filmmakers, we're all artists, and we understand that there is power in film. If you think about how the world, for the most part, was introduced to Black people, when years ago, America sent the original birth of a nation to other countries, which was white people depicting themselves in blackface, doing all types of crazy things. So people in other countries assumed that that's how Black people were. And so when they came to America, their stigma of what a Black person was based off of a white man and woman in blackface portraying Black people. There's power in film. The reason why we even have people who are arrested for Ahmaud Arbery's case is because there was a film. The reason why we have people arrested for George Floyd's case is because there was a film. The reason why they're even talking to people about all these other cases are because they were filmed. But when you have someone who was as innocent as sleeping in her bed and she's murdered, there are no arrests that have been made because they don't have any proof. Proof of what? Proof that I was sleeping? That I wasn't doing anything, that I wasn't a threat to you because I was asleep. So you have to understand that social media, and I know specifically for myself and Courtney, with this particular revolution of 2020 and the George Floyd's protests that started, we saw just how powerful having our phones in our hands at the right times changed the history of what is being recorded during this specific revolution. I understand that before our video capturing the women who were, vandalizing the Starbucks, writing Black Lives Matter on the Starbucks, and they weren't Black women. Before we confronted them, there weren't any videos showing that it wasn't Black people looting and vandalizing. Everything that was on the news before that was that it was Black people who was tearing up our cities and tearing up other people's things. Because I was looking at the news and I saw that. And so it took us to have to go on the front lines ourselves, see with our own eyes. Before we caught those women, we had seen other people vandalizing, and Black Lives Matter supporters had to put stickers on the wall saying, hey, this wasn't us that did this. This wasn't us that did this. So imagine if we would not have taken the video showing that it wasn't Black people vandalizing this Starbucks. The news the next morning, this is a Starbucks on the Grove. Like, this is a predominant area in Los Angeles. Baby, this would have been all over the news. And who would they have blamed for it? They would have blamed us. So social media gives us power. And right now, in a revolution like this, we need power. Social media allows us to, obtain allies all over the world. Our reach is further now. Back in the day, our ancestors, they just had meetings in the basement, and just by word of mouth. Now, our reach is further. Our togetherness can be stronger because we can create allies, not just here. This is the first time in history that the entire world has protested on behalf of Black people. It's never been done in history. And why is that? It's because of social media. Because if they would have continued to just look at the news would have painted a completely different picture than what was actually going on. And so when we took this in our hands, no, we shouldn't have to do it. But the fact of the matter is we do.
Yeah, social media and the pandemic.
And the pandemic was a gift and a curse for sure, because it allowed us to not be distracted. But social media gives us an opportunity to put the truth out. I remember when Mike Brown died, and I remember that it was a journalist who had her social media, who was the first person on the ground and was telling us what was going on. And I was listening to her from my phone and looking at the news in Ferguson. And I'm like, these are two different stories going on, but she's there. So it's a power that we have. And unfortunately, when they realize how powerful it is, as it's gone in history, they usually try to take away our power as much as they can. So if that happens, we'll see. But we do understand that it gives us the opportunity to speak our truths.
Speaking on gift and a curse, I definitely 100% feel that social media is a gift and a curse. For me being an empath, as soon as Courtney said that it is exhausting, I felt that, because that's exactly what I wake up to every morning. As a Black man, I wake up every morning as soon as and that's just my thing. I wake up, I check the news, I'll check Instagram, I'll read my text messages I missed over the night. And the first things that I wake up to, even in this pandemic's been heightened, is I'm reminded that there's a target on the back of my head. I'm reminded that I have to pull my pants up, even if I just want to sag them just a little bit, because it feels comfortable to me that I'm going to be judged and possibly targeted. That I have to wake up and be reminded there's a mother out there that just lost her son. I have to wake up and be reminded that there's a brother who just lost a sister. I have to be reminded that we are dying at an alarming rate. It is all total warfare out there, and they're not shying away from showing us that. Like, look at what just happened, and it was a Kenosha. It's total warfare, and it's tiring, and it's gut punching. It's a gift and a curse. Like, yes, we're informed. Yes, the world sees it. But at the same time, I have to wake up to the same anxiety every morning. Like, who tell me, please, who else is waking up to the other anxiety?
Nobody. And, you know, when we start looking at health, and it's not off topic because it's all related. When we start looking at health and Black men and Black women and the different things that we deal with in regards to, heart attacks, strokes and stuff like that, that's like our body taking on these stressors each and every day. And, when there are, numbers are high for women to die from a heart attack and stuff like that, it's because of things like this. Like, I have a nephew that just went to college, and I have male cousins, and it's not just them that I'm concerned about, but it's the women as well. It's, when I was growing up, because you asked a question earlier about racism and how has it affected us or if we've experienced it. I don't recall the talk about, if you ever get stopped, put your hands on the wheel, reach slowly. I don't recall that conversation. I don't know if that conversation is reserved more for males than women. I really don't know. I just don't recall it. But having a nephew, having young cousins, I remember when they turned a certain age, I just always felt, and I don't like to worry, have anxiety, you pray, but I'm always having a feeling, like just praying over them and to ask God to cover them, because they can be taught, put your hands up, don't talk back, don't so-and-so. It's like at this stage of where we at, they know, we know, but you still die. So there is no right thing to do anymore. You know what I mean? You learn certain stuff, and then or your liberties as a person when dealing with like a police officer, they can detain you and handcuff you. That doesn't mean you're arrested. They can have you there for hours. And we always be like, well, what am I being arrested for? You're not arrested until they read you your rights. But the average American does not know. Just by them putting you in handcuffs and sending you down doesn't mean you're under arrest. They're detaining you, and they can try to figure out or make it seem like you're attached to whatever it is that they say. They don't have to let you call anybody. And it's just like, we don't know those things. So it's like, even though we're teaching our kids to do certain stuff, to not to piss off cops or piss off people or to act right, whatever the hell that means, they still dying.
So I think one thing that's important about what you're saying is that police officers are supposed to have what's called no case on post. They should be able to keep calm in situations that are heightened. I need everyone to remember that is what they are trained to do. So when we see them out here and they immediately react, they are going immediately against their training. And they have to be held. What we're talking about with police is police accountability. Police accountability. They should not be able to hop from county to county. They should not be able, they should have a maximum number of cases that are brought against them before their actual police chiefs. Police unions have more power than police chiefs. And that's ridiculous. They need to start treating these entities like they treat any other entity. Like as an educator, when schools were low performing, and they were low performing for years, the state came in, took over, does a revamp, brings in their own people until they clean the school up and to make it useful. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, right, has so many cases right now. They killed the young man Andreas, where they took they knocked down all the security cameras and shot this boy 5 times while he was kneeling or had his hands up, to my understanding. They are the same police or sheriff's department whose police chief, Mr. Alex Venezuela, which we need him gone, is talking about he's investigating this gang of police officers called the Executioners, which I want to see his body. I want to see if maybe he has one, right? They just killed another young man the other day and shot him 20 times. I called their sheriff's department a couple of weeks ago because I saw their police officers out without body cams on. I asked the officers first of all, I got hung up on by one officer in the midst of the conversation. And then I'm talking to another one, and I want to know why they don't have these cameras. They said, well, they didn't have the money, but now they have the money. And by October, every one of those sheriff's officers should have body cameras. This call I made before they shot that man 20 times. Something in my spirit told me that they are going to be on a rampage until they get to October because they have no body cameras. And yet and still they killed someone else. And unfortunately, it may happen again because this is September the 6th. It may happen again before they get their body cameras in October. You have no idea what it feels like when my husband says he's going to the store at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm counting the minutes until he gets home. Minutes.
It's interesting because as I'm sitting here, I just feel like, the nation, we need a Siri or Apple Watch on the nation. Because it tells you like when to breathe. It tells you need to breathe. So I feel like we need an Apple Watch on the world right now, because these things are happening and we do have to take moments for ourselves to just breathe, because it's like every day. And that's why I say, like, with social media, just going back to that because of what you said, like if you look in your timeline, right, on Instagram, whatever, but on your timeline, especially like Facebook, I guess, you'll have like these images, 1 second is, somebody, a horrific image. And then right behind that, it's a graduation, a birthday party, then back to that, then kittens, and then back to that. And it's like, how do you manage all of this? And that's why I say, like, when can social media be too much? Also, going back to like, I feel like, the like we as Black people and brown people, we have to have 2 phones now. Like before, it was like the drug dealers kept 2 phones for whatever. The men that were cheating kept 2 phones for whatever. But it's like we have to have 2 phones now. Wow. Because I have to be able to answer my wife when she calls. But if I'm being stopped by the police, I need to be able to record them as well.
So you can't call 911.
I can't call 911 because I got to record you. So which was awesome. Like when I remember the Karen, the bird guy, and he was like, "No, you call 911. I want you to call him because I can't call him because I'm recording." So that was interesting.
Well, do you call 911 at this point? That's my thing, right? In the moment when you
actually have called.
Let me tell you.
Well, that's what we should talk about. The forward movement is who should start developing the groups.
Who do we call? And in the moment, because we're people and we have reactions and feelings and scared and stuff like that. Is my thought process to pick up the phone and start video? Hell, on a good day, I could barely find my video camera. So in the moment, am I gonna remember? Is there like a somebody probably creating it right now if it's not already out? Some kind of app where it's just an automatic something to get it working. It's like, and then when you see it, who called? A couple of weeks ago, it was around 11ish. I was just coming back from getting my hair done. And this is in Century City, and it was like 6 cop cars lined up. And as I'm driving slow because checking, seeing or whatever. And it was a Black man that was in his car, and you had 6 officers, 6 cop cars. I don't understand why you need 6 cop cars. So I'm driving and everything in my mind is working. I'm like, do I stop? But if I stop, what if I distract them? What if something happens? I'm thinking these things and I'm like, oh, well, how do I be safe? And so I was driving and I called my friend. I was like, I don't feel good about this. I was like, I'm saying I need to show up, right? So I'm like, but I'm driving off because I'm thinking about myself, or if it's 12 o'clock, what could happen? So it just wasn't sitting well in my spirit. So I turned around and came back. And when I was coming back, the car was gone and the cops had, driven off. But in the moment, it was like I had 30 different thoughts. It was like, who do I call? I can't call the cops. They all here. Like, who am I calling? What do I do? Do I have CNN on speed dial? Do I have some kind of news, something? Like, what do we do in that moment? And me, if I would have never came back, that would have ate me up. Because I'm saying I'm up here marching and protesting and stuff like that, but I'm seeing something and it's 11 something at night, and I don't know what I'm gonna do as a woman by myself. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm gonna agitate the situation, because of course you stop, you say, hey, police officer, what's going on? Get back, that could agitate everything and it can go all left. So it's like, who do we call?
I want to ask this as well. You remember, I know growing up, like when you saw officers with, somebody pulled over, you always thought, oh, well, they must have been doing something bad. But now it's like you have to and so even back then when we saw it, this is what was happening. You know what I mean? So it's rethinking like what is happening, like who we are. And also, y'all brought up, it's funny because I want to tell you, so I took notes and I wanted, had questions to ask, I wanted to be thorough in what I was doing. But this is how important this conversation is, because everything that I wrote down to like ask, it's been touched on. Like, my little outline, it's been touched on. And Nia, going back to the fact, like with the pandemic happening, but yet we still had a protest in, all over the world. Black people, that show you how important you are to the world. You're that important that in a pandemic, everywhere had a protest. So understand your worth. Know your worth. You are worthy. I want to move on to the talk. The talk. Now, growing up, the talk to us was the birds and the bees.
That's what we're talking
but
about.
That's not what we're talking about. The talk now, like that has to be important. And like, and I bring this up because I have a biracial son. And at 11 years old, we had to have this talk with him, and coming from two sides of the fence. And so even with our young kids, like you have to have this. Not long ago, you had to have the birds and the bees talk a lot sooner, because of the rate. Now it's like, I gotta look. We went to a birthday party, a socially distanced birthday party. Let me say that. And for those that are just tuning in or whatever, we're all in the same place, but this is my tribe. So this is who we roll with. Yeah. So, but we went to a birthday, and the kids there, I was telling my wife, they was so beautiful. All of this melanin was just so beautiful. But as cute as they were, at what age are they going to be a threat or be looked at as a threat? And the fact that you have to talk to your 7-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old child, to especially the young boys, you are going to be looked at as a threat in like a year. And like I said, so we had the talk with my son, and then and to see his reaction to it. And if you've ever met him, he's so full of life, so full of love. He loves everybody. And that's part of his foundation. But then at the end of that, we had to explain to him, listen, now at 16, we're going to have another talk because you're going to start driving. And like you said, nobody, I've asked some of my wife, have you ever talked to your children about like what happens if they get pulled over? No. And then what they tell them, listen, you can talk to them any way you want to talk to them. They better not touch you. That's what they tell them. And I've seen it. I've seen this. It comes from higher. So I want to move on to, we're talking about all of this, and we're asking like, what's next? Why is it so important to vote?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, we got to get this fool out of there. That's first and foremost, okay? Like, before anything else, before my ancestors that marched, before the fight for free, before all of that, we just have to get this fool out of here. And he is not a detriment to just the Black community. He is a detriment to America. To America, the way he has handled himself since he's been a president, the way he's handled this pandemic, The reason why America's rates have skyrocketed, the reason why he just had a convention with thousands of people and not one person with a mask, ain't nobody tested. He done already had people on his staff who has been tested positive for coronavirus. He's had people who's died around him, and he still doesn't care. America is in a state of emergency for more than one reason. And if we do not change the leadership of this country, it is going to be worse. This is a thing that's a fact. There's no way that it's going to get better if he's still in office. He's never, not one time, showed us anything different than what he is. If you're talking about when somebody show you who they is, believe him, he continues to show us. He is the most consistent person I have met to show me foolishness. And so with that being said, I understand that, everybody may have their own feelings about who he's running against, Joe Biden and Kamala and all of those things. But ultimately, for America's safety, we have to get him out of the office.
Now, I may offer something that a lot of people can relate to when it comes to voting. Now, I still registered to vote. I still will vote. Do I trust our voting system? No, not 100%. But will I still continue to go out there and do it? Yes.
Can I ask you a question? Did you not trust our voting system before this year when the liars started putting out all of these things?
I haven't always. I've never trusted the voting system. Even when I got it what I wanted, I was like, Okay. Even when I get what I want, I still have questioned it. I've always questioned the Electoral College and why we need to have that. I've always questioned why doesn't the popular vote? Because when Hillary lost, it clearly stated that she won the popular vote. When George won his second term, they had the miscount. It's always been these things that have made me question it. Do I still feel honored that we have the right and the ability to vote? Do I trust it? No, but will I continue to do it? Because at some point, it has to work. At some point, the system has to make a difference. So voting is what makes that system and makes that change.
So it's like, because I really, and I try not to even talk about this, right? Because I've been voting since I was 18, and not ever did I think or not trust, right? Like Electoral College, yes, that's one thing. But not ever did I say, oh my gosh, or my ballot isn't going to make it, or it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I think that we have a narcissist and a liar in office, right? And that he's operating in fear right now. And we cannot operate in fear with him, right? Like I'm done talking about the fact that mail-in ballots and all of that other stuff. It's been working. They did it in the Civil War. Like this has been going on for years. And so now all of a sudden, because he's scared he's gonna lose, it's not gonna work. I'm not having it. That's garbage and it's trash, okay? So vote early, do whatever you have to do. Number 2 is this Electoral College thing. Yes. So what needs to happen is we have to have a president who's brave enough to sign off on that. That's the problem, right? So they like to keep that in place for a safety mechanism. And not one president yet, maybe it should come up when we were talking with different presidents that we've liked, but right now you have someone in office that is not going to abolish that, right? Maybe we can talk about that the next 4 years, because as of January 21st, we're going to be talking about a different administration, and I'm just going to speak that. I need you to believe it, let it settle in your spirit so that it can come to fruition, okay? Because if we don't believe it, it's not going to happen, right? First of all, first and foremost. Now, I want to inform everyone of this, remember this, and share with your friends. The Supreme Court ruled that with Hillary, and let's go back and break it down. So with Hillary and Trump right now, right? They had to go back and they sent all the representatives, and they actually had to cast their vote, right? Because they were talking about the popular vote. There were representatives who went against and voted against what their county voted because they were scared. Right? Now, the Supreme Court, this last year in 2019, I believe, ruled that if representatives do that, they can be fined and jailed. Take that information, look it up, because there's articles on it, and share it with your friends so that if it happens, that we can hold those people accountable from now on, I'm not just talking about this election, I'm talking about this election and moving forward. So that is not acceptable. Those representatives should not do that, and we have to make sure. That is also why we have to make sure we're filling out the census. Okay. Now, I want to encourage people. I know it's like, no, I don't want to aid too much in my business. Honey, they know your business anyway. Everybody said, if you got a phone, if you text, if your phone hits a cell phone tower, they know your business. If you swiping your debit card, they know your business. Okay. So do the census. In any relationship, there has to be a level of trust. And I think right now we don't trust our relationship with the government. And I'm not saying I believe we have a reason to not trust them. But if we're going to be in this relationship and not move to another country, if we're like, okay, well, we're going to continue to live in another country, then we have to work on that relationship. If you want to stay here, right? So why not? So what they do with this money this year, I said we're in a sweet spot. We're in a pandemic. We're dealing with a global pandemic, a racial pandemic. We have an election year, and we have a census. So fill it out. And when they come back with the money, you need to have a seat at the table so that you can make sure that they allot that money to the right place. That's also the problem. We are not sitting at the table and making them accountable for the money that they're saying they're allotting to our communities. Make sure they have your census counts for representatives that go to Congress. Your census money counts for roads. It counts for schools. It counts for, you want a swimming pool in your area. You need a golf course in some of these Black neighborhoods. You want to have a ranch, and have horses and things. We have to have a seat at the table to talk about how you're going to distribute this money to our community. I had a friend tell me, she said, oh, I want them to work on the common sense method. I think that's ludicrous because we have been asking them to use common sense for years, and they are untrusted, right, into doing this, right? Common sense is dead at this point, right? Because if you say they took money, right, from a social service 7 years ago, say that social service is no longer available, or that nonprofit or whatever it is went out of business because they couldn't receive funding. So when they allot this money again, you say, oh, let's use the common sense methods. Wherever they took the money from, they give it back. What if that organization is no longer in existence? Do you think common sense, they're going to say, oh, well, that was a social service for the LGBTQ community, so let's find another LGBTQ organization to give to? Or are they going to give it to an organization that benefits them and their community?
Yeah. I think along with all of that, we have to get involved on a local level, because, these are big things. We have our elections, the 4-year, all those things, yes. And we get up and we're like, well, we got to get them out, like y'all said, get them out, period. But locally, we need to start being involved. When we're talking about these changes that we want to happen, or just even the representatives that's taking place within our states, that's where it starts. I will be honest, growing up and everything, I feel like people start getting involved when it's like, oh, what area am I going to settle down in, live? What do I want my community to be like? What schools do I want my children to go to? People become a little bit more aware on a local level. And we just think that it's reserved for those particular things, but it's not. When all of these different petitions go out and they ask us to reach out to your governor or reach out to your assemblyman, like, I don't want to be like, it's embarrassing, but I have to go Google that because I don't really know, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, we have to educate ourselves on these different people that we're kind of going and voting or doing tic-tac-toe when we go to vote, or just looking at the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, whatever you are. It's like, no, we need to look further and see if they are standing behind some of our core values. And it's not to say that everybody's going to hit everything, check off every box, because that's not going to happen. We're all individuals. We all want something different, but it's the awareness of what they're saying. And it's like, do you believe they're going to try to put those things in place and what you're voting for? And when you know who your assembly people are, your Congress people are, your governors, all these different people, you can go and, call to the table. Mm-hmm. You can go to these meetings. These things are open. Some of the stuff, gosh, I'm drawing a blank on it. Like if you go to the county or some stuff when they're bringing things. So like you can go and sit in on these different topics. It's not like it's these kept secrets.
Open.
Yeah, they're open to the public, but a lot of times we don't know it, or we don't put the time in to do it, or if we don't feel like it immediately affects us, we're not doing it. So local involvement and just having a better awareness of what's going on and putting your vote in there, paying attention when those votes come around, it matters, because that's what's going to change. Like think about it, y'all. We're in the pandemic, right? Every state is operating differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one big national thing that we all are attending to or doing. No, every state operates differently. So there's different laws, like we just had I don't want to jack it up. I think it was PS 731 or something like that. But basically, the petition that was going out to talk about like police force, police brutality, certain stuff that here in California that we needed to vote for. And it's just like knowing those things, or what these numbers stand, what all of this stuff is. And if we want to see change, it happens here, and then it grows, because these people that we vote for locally, these are the people. It's like, just say it's how many of us? It's 6. Am I counting right? 6 of us again, right? So just say we elect 3 people in here. Y'all are voices. You all operate here, but then you go and represent us somewhere else. And that's the thing. It's like, who are we sending as our representation?
Yeah.
So
it's almost like you say, when you break it down to the basics of it, if you want to be a great team, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't start off being a great team. You have to work at it. You have to. So if we're putting together a team, whatever it is, I got to start with key players. So my key players are on the city and local level. Those are my key players. I got to start with them. And then as I build them up, they're able to get to the championship, because we've trained them to be great. And so, like you said, everybody usually gets up for, it's the presidential, it's time for me to elect the president. Oh, yeah. But the work for who they want has already been done. So you got to get in on the ground floor. You got to start that work and know what's happening, know what's going on, and voting is so important, like, especially like right now, it's so important. And I'm just going to be honest with, I didn't, because of like being here in California now for 5 years, it was like, I don't really, have to worry about California. I just vote but it's so important, because now, you're registered here. This is where, if you're working and living in that place, you need to know what's going on. You know what I mean?
Local elections. I mean, we can look back at the Obama administration, right? And I mean, you have some people that are like, but he didn't do this, he didn't do that. But how many things did he try to do? Like they blocked, because we had not voted in the 2-year elections, right? To make sure that he had. We didn't vote in the local elections to make sure that he had the support he needed to get things passed, right? Like, they didn't even honor the judge that he wanted to put into the Supreme Court. They blocked that, which is crazy to me. When has that ever happened in history, and they allowed that to happen? When this current administration has put in 200. So you need to watch where those 200 are. And those 200 that he put in place are going to be working well past when he's gone. You see what I'm saying? And going to be working well past on their initiatives. Somebody who just took away, who said that affirmative action shouldn't be a thing. This is crazy. We're going to keep these people out of your neighborhoods. These are the things that he's saying, and it's mind-blowing to me. If you're supporting this man, I need you to look at so many things. I need to ask you so many questions about yourself. Okay?
Now, I just wanted to jump back on the part that Candice just said about the local elections. I'm getting the thing about the local elections. And I remember as a young age, and this is one of the good things about growing up in Decatur and in Lithonia, Georgia, I got to see Black politicians on both sides of the party line. I grew up, working on the campaigns for Cynthia McKinney and Vernon Jones, and then going up to see what the effects were of their I guess their tenures in their positions. Vernon Jones wasn't the greatest CEO of DeKalb County. Cynthia McKinney wasn't always the best. And when they came around again and we started seeing these changes at the local level, it made a big change for the city of Atlanta, for Decatur, and for us local. So I do agree with you on the local level. It's just, for me, as I said earlier, when we start talking about the national, is where I lose distrust. And it's, again, not because of everything that's happened in this recent election. And that makes me even more galvanized to vote more. You know, I've even said on my when they asked me to register, how will I vote? I said, I'm voting in person. I said, I don't care about this pandemic. I'm gonna mask up. I'm a free mask, put some gloves on. I'm going there and voting because I want to make my stuff. But then they told me today, as they're now rolling out the early voting and all that kind of stuff, they ask you to check your registration status. It says on there that I am a permanent mail-in voter. I didn't make that choice. Why did you ask me the choice if you're going to turn around and tell me what I'm going to do? And then this whole thing with what they're trying to stop the mail thing. So I mean, that's not why I'm paranoid. That just added to my paranoia.
You definitely check, and you definitely have to check to see where you are. And I don't know, I personally feel like you probably kind of have to keep checking as it gets closer to see what they're saying. Because they do have it where it changes, or you didn't change it. But those are the things. It's like those resources. Like I feel like I've seen more stuff that has gone out now to say check where you register, check to make sure you still, because we're in this space right now. But I just think about in the past years, was that information like pushed out like that as it is now? You know what I'm saying? So, cause I'm like, am I just paying attention now? I'm just more aware, or was that the case? But we're in a place, and I have conversation with some people, and some people, Black people feel like I'm not gonna say it's just Black people. I'm talking about the conversation I've had with Black people, and some of them just like, they don't trust it, and as far as not voting. Now there's a big part of me that feels like I'm not telling you how to vote or anything like that, but I am definitely saying, like, I feel like our ancestors went through a lot for us to have the right to vote, and to just, I don't know, feel like, well, it's not going to matter anyway. I personally think that's the wrong attitude to have with it. I think we still have to keep pushing forward, because as we're doing all these other things with the protests, with the petitions, with the so-and-sos and all this other kind of stuff, voting is just another pillar. It's just another part of it. So it's not, it's like we do these other things, but don't vote. It's like, where the change is happening. It takes all of these different pillars to make a change happen. So I just really urge our people to go out and vote, because you think about like some of our peers or that's incarcerated, they can't vote. You know what I'm saying? Which is a whole nother subject. They should be able to. Right. You know what I'm saying? Right.
I thought they had that conversation about some people who.
Huh?
I thought they were starting to.
Yeah, I think it's certain states. I was talking about the conversation here. We didn't have it. I think and don't quote me on this, but I feel like that's based upon states, right? Mm-hmm. What the state decides and stuff like that. But if you think about it, because if you think about it, we're talking about systematic stuff, and our people that's gone to jail for weed. Now you got all these cannabis, whatever, that's going, that's a whole nother story. All these cannabis stores going up, but these people haven't been released. Their right to vote is gone. It's just all these other stuff to keep the minority vote from not being present. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something. Voting is important. And not voting your feelings. Like, we need to really not, look at it and not just vote on our feelings, because some people feel a certain way with, what's going on with Joe and Kamala, So it's like, come on, let's look at it in totality.
And before we move forward from that, what you just said, talking about people not respecting the history of the vote. That's not at all what I aim to disseminate by what I was saying. For me, I fully see that there is systemic racism all around me. So what's there to stop systemic racism from voting? Inside of that, not to say that I'm fearful of it. I'm still, like I said, I'm still going to do it. I'm just, forgive me, I'm the child of a conspiracy theorist, that I know that there's something out there where they're trying to quell my voice. Like, look at what we talked about earlier, what they did to the Black dollar. They went to Tulsa, Oklahoma and bombed it. They went to all those other places and bombed it. So, I mean, in terms of what they're doing for the vote, I know that if we're, and it's just me, it could be just my paranoia that is like where we're coming from, where we're voting from. Like, why does it matter where we are? Why do you need to know? Like, so you can see what this side of town is voting for. So you can try to, so, okay, well, they did that. Let's change this. You know, we don't know. There's so much mystique around voting that just gives you that sense of uneasiness. And that's all I was saying.
That's, I believe, where we need to get in the room. In those rooms. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a mystique. Then where are our people who are excited about politics? Where are people that are excited about the judicial system or the three branches, right? Because we have to be in those rooms. And I keep referring back to, like, Bill Bellamy did a post, it's a couple of weeks ago, and he was just like, he said, things are like the meals come out different when we get in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we add a little spice, we add a little salt and pepper or whatever seasonings that we have, and it just changes the meal and how it comes out. And so we have to be in those rooms when we're the educators. Instead of just an all-white, a school of teachers, then the education comes out different, right? When we're in politics, like we right now have Kamala in office, and I want to encourage people to say her name right. Spell the word comma, and then say love, right? So Kamala, because I'm not even going to say my predictions on that, but we have to make sure that we're in those kitchens, and I think it matters. So for those of us who are a little worried about, voting, then let's see, how do we do that? Have you ever volunteered at a polling place to actually see how it goes? Have you ever gone, or sent a letter? Have you run for that office, to try to figure that out? Have you worked with any of the organizations that work with voter suppression? That's why I say it's so important. Like, even sitting here, like, we've had a difference of opinion about certain things. Like you said, Candice, like, it's a little different, but that's why those differences are so vital and important, because we matter to the conversation. And so I just want us to get in those rooms and support organizations that work on things that we want to work on. Like, I have a passion for education. You may have a passion. You may want to, sign up for the voter suppression or, different things, but it all matters, right? Send your money, your time, spend your money, spend your time, like all of those things.
And so it's great that you bring that point up. So in talking, and I hope you all have learned something from, hearing our stories and this discussion. We're coming up on probably about 20 minutes left of the segment. But I want to say, the title of it is "Your Future is Brighter Than Your Past." And I got that comes from, I have to give honor to where honor is due and credit where credit is due. My dad, who's a minister, and that was a saying that he came up with: your future is brighter than your past. And when you think about it, regardless of what you went through yesterday, tomorrow has got to be better. But you have to make that choice for it to be better. Yeah. So in saying that, I want to know, and I want to ask this question: what's next? And I open that up to what's next? What do you think is the next step? Because, there are allies out there who are listening. They're listening to what's being said, and they're taking it all in. But for those that don't know, like, how to help, what can we say to them? And I know, Courtney, you touched on it a little bit about, like, these charities and stuff. So tell me a little bit about, like, what's next. And if you have a charity or a scholarship fund that you want to plug in right here, please do. And I'll start with you, Candice.
First, I guess I would say what's next is, a lot of this stuff could be a lot. I don't want to use the word overwhelming, but a lot of it could be a lot of information coming at you, fast and things like that. So I would say find at least one thing that you're passionate about and start doing the research on that. So let's say, for instance, we just talked about voting, right? We talked about it locally. You have kids that's in school, and it's about, who you need to vote for to be a part of these educational changes and stuff like that, look into that. Start there, and then grow. I think as people, we need to listen to one another and have empathy, and put action behind the different things. Let's not be quiet. Let's not be silent. Silence is violence. Your allies speak up. Be on the front line. What Nia's shirt says. And for me personally, outside of being active in different groups and learning too, because it's a learning curve for myself as well. Especially on political things and stuff like that, because that wasn't what I was always plugged into, because it bothered my spirit. But hey, it's okay if it's bothered. But for me, the other thing that's next is helping that next person have a voice. Those kids, we talked about education and stuff like that. So I guess I'll just mention my scholarship. So I have a scholarship foundation. It's called Your Path Scholarship, because it's all about charting your path, using your voice and things of that sort. And it is for African-American Black students that are majoring in the arts, rather it's dance, music, TV, film, theater, whatever the arts may be, majoring or minoring and going to HBCUs. And it's specific in that manner. And, over the next years, hopefully to expand it to PWIs as well. But
what is a PWI?
I just learned that. I just learned that a couple years ago. PWIs is predominantly white institutions. HBCUs is historically Black colleges and universities. And my scholarship is specific because one of the things that I came up against when I was in school, I went to Florida A&M University. I did the 5-year MBA program, which was a stellar, fabulous business program. I ended up minoring in theater in my junior year. But one of my challenges is that when I wanted to switch to major in theater, all of my money, because I did internships with the business program, that's what paid for my school. So just me being a person that was putting myself through school, and that was my resource to pay for school, making that switch into the theater program wasn't a financially feasible thing, and which I feel like those are things that we shouldn't have to think about in school, but it is. So the Scholarship Foundation is built on those people that want to pursue what it is they want in the arts, may not have those funds, but if it can help them with their education in some way to make their transition easier. So
Courtney?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's about everything, all of it. Like you said, we have to pick. So I want to talk about management, right? We have to learn how to unplug when needed, right? So some of us, if scrolling on your social media is too much for a couple of days, stay off, right? But management also means that we cannot give up, right? So I need you to add at least 30 minutes to an hour to your week, to your whatever cause that you want to, because we can't stop. If you want to say every week I'll make 30 minutes worth of phone calls to call in support of justice for these things, or I'll spend 30 minutes a week to talk to kids about voting, or, things like that. So it's management, right? We have to be able to fit that into our schedule post quarantine. Right? Because right now we're at home and we have time and we like, oh, honey, I'm going to call. Oh, honey, I'm going to protest. But when we all go back to work and, things like that, it may get a little difficult, right? And it may. But think about how difficult it may be for some of those others who are locked up or still fighting for justice. And try to commit to those 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour. So, yes, management. We need to talk about housing. That's important. We need to talk about mental health. We need to talk about police reform. We need to talk about prison reform. And we need to talk about education, okay? I think those are the top 5 things that we need to talk about. Write it down, put it on your wall, put it on your to-do list. I want us to pay attention. So I plan on creating something, and it may be, already in another form somewhere else, but something called Adopt a State. Now, a lot of us have roots in the South, right? Or if we don't, we have family from somewhere. Like I went to school in Alabama. I've lived in Georgia. My great-grandmother is from Texas, and I'm from Illinois, but I currently live in California, right? So I might say on this Adopt a State page that I want to subscribe to these 4 states to help them, because I think our southern states are going to need a second and third line of defense, because as much as they are trying to fight for change, the opposition is coming that hard against them. So we have to make sure that we're lined up for that. And what does that look like? It might mean getting notifications to your phone or your email in regards to voting, right? Like we have states that we are talking about flipping the Senate for, right? Like North Carolina, Texas is possible. South Carolina is a big state right now that we're looking at talking about flipping the state. And so what does that mean? It might mean to send $15 to their fund during that time of elections. It may mean to, when we're talking about changing school systems or changing the names of schools, there are still schools predominantly in the South that are still named after Confederate leaders. Now, the thing about that is that the Confederacy fought to keep us enslaved. So history or no history, love your history. Those of you white people that want to still fly your Confederate flag, keep it at your house, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, but just like these monuments, I think they should all go to a museum somewhere. Y'all want to go and read up on your history, then go there. But the Adopt a State to me looks like that. It may be to sign a petition to change the names of these schools. It may mean that you're looking at counseling services that should be coming up in these areas and maybe donating to a fund, right? So it's just being aware of those different states, because it can't just be you focusing on you and your area. We have to look at the compassion for the country, for the world. And so I think that's important.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm going to my community. I'm focused on, building strength where strength is, and that's in the Black community. I'm focused on what the schools are not teaching us. I'm focused on us learning about our history, our heritage. I want us to get to a place where we can have numerous generations on our wall, and we can say, that's my great-grandma who did this and my great-grandfather who did this. I'm focused on us having awareness of who we are, so we can pass that down to our children, so they can stand for something, so they can have a certain type of pride to carry themselves in a certain type of way, so they can understand that they are kings and queens and gods and goddesses, and they should be respected as such. I am also about creating opportunities for the Black dollar. I'm about Black ownership when that comes to businesses, when that comes to our homes. I'm about us owning our own and being able to control our money and circulate that within our community. I believe that more than anything, what white people listen to is them coins. They listen to money. When you take money out of their pockets, now all ears are open. And I believe that I want to focus on just building that wealth in our community. I want to have generational wealth. My uncle is the president of Cheney University right now, which is the first Black HBCU in America. And I believe that with that, him changing that university, I think that we're able to talk to our children about having their own. So I'm about just creating the love. My company, Bringing Love Back, is specifically about that. Bringing love back to us and bringing love back to our money and our ownership. And so that's what my goal is right now, is to focus on that.
My focus is to keep maintaining and having these conversations for the future, because I feel like the more that we get to know everyone involved and everybody gets to know our stories, the more people will hopefully grow a heart and change. I literally had this conversation last night with an ally that we need to continue to have these conversations. I feel like everyone in the world needs to take, as Courtney said, a humanities class. Everyone needs to learn what everyone else has gone through, because I feel like once you know that, you can actually empathize and sympathize with people, so that you can go ahead and make these changes at your local level, at the national level. And that's just the mindset that I've had since going to Talladega College. I created a group called Absolute Dreamers, which was just to kind of level the playing field. And I've been wording it and trying to find a way to word it, but it wasn't until Courtney said it the other day in one of her interviews that we need, not only do we need equality, but we need equity. And that is now, it opened my mind to, this is how I've been trying to get this company built, is that I want to be able to level the playing field across the board for all of us, and not just level it so that we're all starting at the same place, but see who needs what where, so that we can all be on the same plane. Because if we all have that opportunity to go forward, where you get the help that you need, I get the help that I need, they get the help that they need, and we can all move forward together, That's the American dream. That's what this was founded upon. And regardless of how you get here and where we are, where are we now? We can work and move forward to get to the dream. And that's what I think that we need.
I wanted to say was financial literacy, and I believe Mia hit on it. I know with my nieces and nephews, there's certain things I've started with them to be aware at such a young age, because when we have that power to do those things and make those moves by in community and stuff like that. So that's something I know I'm doing inwardly, and some of me and my girlfriends been talking about, like back at our schools, like buying lots so that apartments and stuff like that.
Like them 93 acres they just bought in Toomsboro, Georgia.
Yes, exactly.
Which by the time they get the next census, they will be able to have representatives for that section of town, which means they can build their own sheriff's office, their own get their own postal service, get their own whatever they want. And it can be, black on black on black, right? Yeah. But, my scare then is I just think we want to be mindful of segregation again. I believe that, and I think everybody's different, but I know that we need our own, but I also think segregation, we still have to find a way to work on our relationships with others, even if we have our own, right? Because we're living in a melting pot. So I just think that's still important.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're getting ready to wrap this thing up. And just my final thoughts, and as we were thinking about this, I think it is important to, that people understand that we have every right to be angry right now at what's going on. Think about it like this. If someone invited you to dinner or the club or whatever, but told you once you got there, you got to pay the bill. How would that make you feel? I know I would be a little upset and probably not want to hang out with them anymore. Well, that's kind of what happened to African Americans, except for the invite part. So we were forced to come here, stripped of our natural rights. And I'm not going to go through the whole gamut. I mean, we talked about it and touched on it, about the disrespectful, degrading and inhumane treatment of us because, like I said, we all know the story. But after all of that, we are still here. And yeah, you trying to keep us from our greatness, but you can't. I had a coach that used to tell me pressure bust pipes. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? The pipes are close to being busted. But yet we have the right and we have the choice to which way we want to go. We can either go that route for the pressure to bust the pipes, or we can shine like diamonds that we are. So the choice is ours, but understand this one thing, we are not backing down. And our foot is on the gas pedal.
No brakes.
No brakes. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in to this segment of our 48-hour telethon for Vengeance Turns. I hope, you learned something. I want to thank my guests for coming. Tomas, Nia, the Courtney, the wife, Candice, and as well, we had another young man in attendance, my homie from the D, Mr. Carl Duckett, Nia's husband, my homie right there. I appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Now, at this time, Mr. Bobby Smith is going to chime in with it. He's going to chime in. He just wants us to hang out a little bit. Bobby, my guy, what's going on? What do you have to say to the people?
Thank you, guys, man. Been here taking notes, man. And David and I were wondering what you would think about doing this like on a more regular basis. Can't hear you, dude.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. We want you to do this on a more regular basis.
You want me to do this on a regular basis?
Yeah.
You offering me my own show, Bobby Smith?
Well, here's the thing, man. I'm sitting here listening to you guys, and I can't believe, it's like just some of the notes and stuff that I was taking is that we need a coalition. we need like actors making ads addressing things like that we were talking, like I heard you guys talking about, like as far as the importance of voting locally. A cross-cultural coalition, you know, David's Hispanic, I'm as white as they come. And some of the points you guys were making, like we don't have to agree on everything. And that's like, you know, within our own communities and between communities. It's we have to keep our eyes on the bigger picture. And when it comes to things like politics, it's like the difference between the forest and the trees. We have the forest, which is like the political parties. We have the individual issues that affect us. And too many people right now are focused on the forest instead of the trees, you know, and they're wanting to protect their forest and they're never looking to see what's happening to their trees. And that tears me apart, you know. So no matter how much disagreement we experience within groups, between groups, it behooves us to work together. The thing is it's older than history, you guys. You know what I mean? To let ourselves be divided by the people in power. And I'm not talking about blacks and whites. I'm talking about dividing the black community even. I heard you guys starting it off talking about black on black violence. And I've always had a problem with that phrase as well, because I believe that that's meant to keep black communities focused at each other and things like that. But I'm not going to waste my time in telling you guys what you're educating me on. What I'm curious about is, what can I do? You know, I am a vocal ally. I'm not silent.
He's not silent. So
I don't want to co-opt the message.
Right. But I will say this right here, allowing your friend to have this type of platform, you're starting it. This is one way of helping. You know, you're opening now, even you're talking about like doing this on a regular, that's opening up a door to be able to just talk, you know, in order to speak, you know, to others, you know, and give voice, you know, to shed light on what's happening. And I think it's so important, especially like as actors, as creators, you know, art imitates life. So this speaks to us being able to create what we want to create, our own stuff, you know, create our own story.
That's why I'm so choked up right now, because I feel like it's like in the past few days I've been watching like something good happen. Wow, there's so much shitty happening. And you guys were the icing on the cake today.
No. Yeah, Bobby, and I see Dave Cope just joined in. What's up, Dave?
How you guys doing?
Doing great.
So let's make a deal, man. I want to talk to you offline about continuing this on a more regular basis.
Okay.
I want to talk to you about like forming some kind of coalition to make this work. I'd like to hear more from Tomas about Absolute Dreamers. And I'd like to get him connected with people like Nevin, because Nevin Milan, who plays Ghost with Silent Knives Protect, has something called the Cultural Cornucopia. And it also is focused on bringing diversity into art and things like that. And so I think that Tomas and Nevin would be a real natural connection. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And when I talk about normal things, when I talk business, all the choked upness goes away. So I'll try to get myself to focus back on the businessy side of things. But we would like to make a connection, more of a deeper connection with Tomas, get you guys working. It has nothing to do with me. Any of the charities, the organizations, the causes that you guys care about, we care about. I don't know if you've looked at the 48-hour telethon page. We already do have links out there for Black Lives Matter, some other organizations and causes that Jamald had pointed out to me, as well as many others, protecting Native women. I mean, everything we can think of. So whatever you guys are interested in, we're interested in it. Please share that with us. Help us help others. And let's continue to advance this. We can't have scratched the surface like this today and get me all upset and then drop this, okay? I mean, that's the only thing I'm asking. It has nothing to do with me. I don't want anything from it. It's like with Vengeance Turns, like I've told you, Jamald, all the money I ever make from that, I'm putting it back into the same causes that are on that website. I don't want anything. You know, it's not white guilt. It's nothing stupid or silly, as you could point down to something like that. This is who I am, man. This is who I've been my entire life. You know?
I appreciate you, Bobby. I really do.
Thanks, guys. Thank you all for being here.
I have a question, Bobby.
Sure, lay it on me.
Because you brought up the, what allies and stuff, and what
A
can
vocal
you do?
ally. You've got a vocal ally. You've got a white guy with a loud fucking mouth. That's who you have right here. And what I'm always worried about is that I will misrepresent the message, or that people are trying to think that I'm trying to take the attention. You know what I mean? Because to me, that's what I've seen happen over and over again, from everything from music to acting to whatever throughout history, is that when Black people bring something up that's worth listening to, white people take it over. And I don't want to be that guy.
Well, let me add, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, just from you, because you have the heart to want to do this and be an ally. What does that look like to you? Because I can say what it looks like to me, but what does being an ally or a vocal ally look like to you?
Well, first of all, you're Courtney, right?
I'm Candice. I'm on Courtney's screen. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I was looking down, trying to make sure. Mm-hmm. I'm a loudmouth in general, and when I was in my 20s, I formed a band called Wild Love Rebellion, and I used to stand on stage in Kentucky and screaming about this same stuff, and I wasn't focusing on Black Lives Matters because it wasn't as distilled at that point. For me, it was the Wild Love Rebellion, and it was like trying to spread a message of love and what the fuck is going on with the world when we put so much focus onto money and onto physical things, when it's the spiritual that we all know in the end, brings us any actual satisfaction. It's real love, and it's real bonding and unions, and that gives us power. So for me, it's always been a matter of like not shutting up. And so that's why I'm asking you guys, because I don't feel like I've done enough. I haven't changed anything. I'm 51. And I've got fucking idiots like Donald Trump running my country right now, running our fucking country. You know what I'm saying? My parents, my family are in Kentucky. They're very racist. Here, let me tell you, it's been over 10 years since I spoke with anybody in my family, because their beliefs drove a wedge between us that is irreparable. That's not enough. That I can't just say, okay, well, I won't talk to my family, and now all the problems are solved. But I'm willing to go that far. Is what I'm saying. Is I'm willing to go as far as to jeopardize my relationships with my family. I'm willing to put my life on the line. So I want to hear from the people that are in the fight. I don't want to guess what you guys want me to do. What a Black community wants a white idiot to do. I want them to tell me, because I want to make sure that when I'm doing it, that I'm doing what would carry the best message and the most power for your community and for our community, because I don't look at them as separate.
Yeah. The interesting thing with that, and I don't know if we could talk offline about it or not, is that, and everybody might have something different, feel a different way. That's like sometimes is a huge responsibility. Like when we're asked, what do we want you guys to do and stuff like that. I think we have an idea of where we want you guys to start and everything. But I think like just with some of the stuff that we've been talking about, it's like how we just eventually have to learn and assimilate into the culture or white culture and stuff like that. It's like sometimes we want the initiative to learn the information. Like, if we were talking about like Black Wall Street and we're talking about some of these things like Rosewood and stuff like that, it's like, okay, we can say action, do this, but then it's like, from the ally standpoint, have the reading or the knowledge of trying to learn that information begun on own. And I know for me, that's something that I want. Like, I don't mind saying, hey, I think this is something to do as far as action, but I also, for an ally, I want to make sure that they're educating themselves on certain matters, and that I don't necessarily have to spoon feed them everything, but that they're taking the initiative to learn.
Candice, don't ever spoon feed me. Just kick my ass in the right direction.
I'm with you. All right.
Because again, I know we have another show to do, and I would like to connect with all you guys online. Let me put my Instagram up here just to make it easy, and then we can find another way to do it beyond there. Yeah. But that's the thing, is I do educate myself. I'm a big believer in education. And again, I heard you guys talk about this too, is like ensuring that the right information is being passed on. So if I'm a voice within my community, then I want to make sure that I'm directing people the right way, the right information, blah, 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 all that stuff. But also for me, like what it means is doing things like this, amplifying voices. Do you know what I mean? And finding other ways to amplify voices, because even though I got all worked up and teared up at the beginning of this, what got me going was the fact that David and I felt so strongly, like we were like, this has to be regular. You know what I mean? And that there has to be, and for me, while I was thinking about it, while I do want to have this as a regular show, I also thought I want to do another show that is just a melting pot, that is just a continual swirling thing of who cares if they're black, white, Asian, whoever they are. Let's just make sure that like me and Jamald and David, we have the triumvirate, we have a rainbow right there. That the three of us are somehow running a panel weekly or monthly or something, bi-weekly, something. We'll figure it out. And we just constantly bring people through, because what I really loved was the idea today that the things you were talking about, what got me so friggin' upset was the fact that none of the things you said, other than when it was directly about skin color, like being pulled over and things like that, the things about caring about the other side of that, about the way that a cop would treat anybody who pulls anybody over, is that's all of us, man. And that's not a black and white issue. And when we're being taught that it is, and when we're being put into those boxes, it's not helping us. You know what I mean? And so I want us all to retain our communities and our traditions and our ties to our culture. I never want any of us to lose that. I don't know what mine is, by the way, other than redneck, and I'm trying to shake that. But but what I do care about is that what you were just saying as being like integrated into white culture. F that. Let's bottle that and throw it in the ocean, and then with that swirling cross-cultural like group of people, let's all of us, let's adhere to that. Do you know what I mean? Let's do that. That sounds just so much better to me. I mean, as not as a white person.
Culture. Nia just said, she said human culture. Nia said, let's create human culture.
I mean, I'm tired of being a white person. Sometimes I hate it. In fact, I would rather just be a person, especially when I'm hanging out with my black friends. I just want to be a person.
But thank you all for this. It was a great platform to talk about this. So thank you.
My heart exploded like within 15 minutes, and people all over.
Let's get to it.
We're gonna cut this apart and replay it over and over, guys. So this is not the only time this will be played. It'll be played over and over.
Cool. Thank you.